On behalf of Newtownards Apprentice Boys of Derry Club, I would like to welcome everyone to our parade and burning of Lundy to commemorate the 337th anniversary of the shutting of the gates of Londonderry on the 7th of December 1688. A special welcome is offered to our distinguished guest and speaker, Brother Samuel Morrison, also to the worthy president of the Apprentice Boys of Derry Club, Brother Sam McKittrick, and to Brother Jim San, Member of Parliament. We also, to other Apprentice Boys of Derry's Club and officers and members, all our guests from other clubs, parent clubs and amalgamated committees, welcome and thanks also to the Melody Flute Band and the North Down First Flute Band for, and not forgetting our good friends here, the members of the public. We couldn't have such a successful parade without all your support now and in the years to come. We can't have a burning of Lundy without an effigy, of course, and as usual it is very well done by Mr. Trevor Brands and his family, as usual, for making a superb effort. I'd also like to thank Brother Mark MacDonald for providing and setting up the PA system. I would like to now call on the Treasurer of the Present Boys of Derry's Parent Club, Brother Victor Kitson, to light the effigy. In your own good time, sir.
Whoa, you warm now? Hurt your eyes? Here.
Okay, well, thanks again very much, sir, to Brother Kitson for an efficient lighting of the Lundy. Brethren, I will now hand over to our guest speaker, Primal Samuel Morrison.
All right, folks, this is on. I was wondering whether it was on or not, but if you get your voice up a bit, your voice certainly carries. I want to thank everybody, first of all, for the invitation to be here tonight. I regard it as a privilege to be given the opportunity to address you, particularly on this historic occasion. So thank you to the president of the club and to the brethren who invited me here tonight. I thought throughout today that we would have some fun getting the Lundy to light, given the wind and the rain that there was. And my fears would have been even for the safety of the Christmas tree if the wind had stayed up. But we have had a mercifully mild evening in spite of the inclement weather throughout the day. I was given two prerequisites for what I was to say tonight. The first thing was to say, remember why you're there. Remind everybody why we assemble to burn the Lundy and what we commemorate. And the second thing that they said, and I'm afraid to say this with Jim standing there, but they told me, Jim, say whatever you want after that. And that was a dangerous thing to say to a TUV press officer. But tonight, of course, we gather to celebrate not a victory, but an act of defiance. A refusal by our forefathers, when faced with impossible and overwhelming odds, to give in. We honour the actions of the Dwight Brave 13, who 3 centuries ago are still remembered today, precisely because they rejected the received wisdom of those around them. Had they listened to the counsel of many inside even the walls of Derry in 1688, there would have been no closing of the gates. There were those who said that their actions were foolish. In fact, in some respects, they acted above their station, didn't they? Just apprentices. Who were they to act in the way that they did? And you had people like Ezekiel Hopkins, the bishop of the city, who advised against the course of action that they adopted. But their determination not to take any heed to those words of capitulation is why they wrote their names into the history books. In seizing the keys of the city, in shutting the gates of the city in the very faces of James's forces, they ensured that they wrote their names into history. And they not only did that, but they preserved a history, they preserved a culture, and they preserved a people by their brave actions. Without the actions of that cold December day, there would be no relief of Derry to commemorate in August. There would be no breaking of the boom to celebrate. In fact, there would even not be any maiden city, because the city would have been entered, would have capitulated without any resistance. And we meet tonight because those brave 13 apprentice boys refused to meekly roll over and accept the easy solution of compromise. And because the crimson banner, not the white flag, flew over St. Colum's Cathedral, we can honour their determination for 105 days as they held out. Without that signal of defiance remaining there would have been no relief to the city. And the fact that the actions of the Brave 13 are remembered after the passage of more than 3 centuries reminds us that there are occasions when the only honourable, the only correct, and the only historically validated action is to respond to a demand for capitulation with the words, "No surrender." There were those who advocated a different path, and they wrote their names into history in a different way. That's what Lundy advocated. Lundy advocated compromise. Lundy advocated coming to an accommodation with the enemy. And he lives not in history, but in infamy. But we remember that history is not merely confined to the history books. By your membership, brethren, of the Apprentice boys, you agree with me, surely, that history has lessons to tell us. There are things that we have to learn. We do not merely look back and think that was a wonderful time of resistance. It's worth being commemorated. It's worth being celebrated. So think about that boom that was constructed across the River Foyle. It was not merely a physical barrier. It was a declaration by James's forces, a signal by them that the city would be starved into submission. And 3 centuries after that boom was destroyed by the Mountjoy and by the bravery of Captain Browning, there is another boom, not across the Foyle, but across the Irish Sea. Not one imposed by a hostile king, but one which is a barrier erected by the political elites and those who are willing to barter away Ulster's position of equal citizenship within the United Kingdom, all for the sake of a quiet life. That sea border exists, like the boom of old, to isolate, to separate, to weaken, and ultimately to sever the connections between this part of the island of Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. And just as we were told by some 300 years ago that this is a sensible way, the pragmatic way, the only realistic way was to accept that situation, we have those today who will tell us that the sea border is there to stay. It is the solution to the Brexit problem. There are others who will agree that it was wrong, that it shouldn't have been imposed. I have to tell you, brethren, that I take no pleasure in noting that many of those who owned their votes on the basis of a manifesto that said that they would not accept the protocol, tonight, finds them as part of a protocol implementing executive. And that is a shame. If unionism is to be taken seriously by Westminster, and we are at a juncture where things in Westminster look set to face a radical shake-up, and where Starmer, barring some miracle, looks like he's on the way out. But just as our forefathers sent a signal of defiance to the forces of William that were down on the Foyle, that there was still resistance there, it is my conviction that unionism still needs to send a message to London, to Brussels, and to Dublin that we have not rolled over and accepted a position of second-class citizenship and dominion status inside the EU. There needs to be a determination and a resolution to put our citizenship of the United Kingdom above all else, not to accept a position of subjugation, not to accept a position in executive where we play second fiddle to a woman who tells us that there is no alternative to the murder of our kith and kin over a 30-year period. And there needs to be a return to the stance of those who refused to capitulate to those overwhelming odds which faced them 300 years ago. So as we look forward to another year, let us resolve that the stance of the Apprentice boys in 1688 should be the stance of unionism in 2026. And once again, let the old cry go up from Ulster: no surrender!
Thanks very much, Brother Morrison, for a very enlightening speech. I would like to welcome everyone to return to the Orange Hall, where refreshments will be available. And if I could ask a parade now to begin to reform on the return journey. Thank you.